Hi, folks. Just wanted to let you know that I'm going to go ahead and start recording, and I'm going to start the meeting.
Mr. Chair, this is Elaine. I just wanted to let you know we have a quorum, so you can go ahead and get started whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. The VTA Board of Directors regular meeting of Thursday, February 4th, 2021 is called to order. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's board meeting. And Elaine, would you please call roll?
Abekoga,
Here.
Blankley, Burt,
Here.
Carrasco, Chavez, Constantine,
Present.
Davis, Gilmore, Jimenez,
Present.
Lee, Licardo, Montano,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Perales,
Here.
Rennie,
Here.
Simitian, Jones, Vice Chair Jones. I thought I saw you earlier. Thank you. Hendricks.
Attending.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. I got to moved a window in my way. Next, we're going to move on to orders of the day. Staff is requesting we remove closed session agenda item 9.1a, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation. Do my colleagues have any other changes? I'm not seeing anyone raise their hands. Would someone be able to make a motion that makes the change of removing item 9.1a?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so it was moved by Montano and seconded by the vice chair. I'm not seeing any other, do we need to do public comments on this item? Carlos or Elaine?
Sorry. We typically don't do public comment on orders of the day, Chair.
Okay, that I
And
didn't think so.
I would.
Okay, so seeing nothing else, could we please have a roll call vote, please?
Chair, I did not get the seconder for the motion. All
Was the vice chair?
right, thank you. Burt,
Yes.
thank you. Carrasco. Carrasco is absent. Chavez. Marquez absent as well. Constantine,
Aye.
thank you. Jimenez. I'll come back to you. Thank you. Licardo. Markham is absent. Montano.
Aye.
Stars. Paul.
Aye.
Perales.
Aye.
Simitian is absent. Jones.
Aye.
Hendricks.
Yes,
Motion passed. Thank you.
thank you.
Licardo is present. Aye.
Thank you. Noted.
Gilmore present as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. The next item on our agenda is awards and commendations. The first is item 2.1, a retirement commendation. Ephraim Kandai-Ing, Senior Contracts Administrator, provided ongoing guidance and training to staff and applied coaching techniques that built motivation and enthusiasm. He received great praise and appreciation from employees whom he mentored and was highly respected by all who knew him. So here, let's give a round of applause for Ephraim. Ephraim is in the teleconference with them. Ephraim, thank you for your 30 years of public service. Thank you to our retirees for his service and commitment to VTA, and congratulations on your retirement. Before we go anywhere, if I could just ask all of my board colleagues to turn their cameras on. because the board office would like to take a quick picture of all of us, if that's possible.
Oh, heck, I don't know how to do that.
Ephraim's, they're doing a picture. Michelle's, sorry.
We will stop share for now so that you guys can have a better photo.
Okay. I'll just remind all my colleagues, if you look at your camera now.
Don't blink.
Okay, we'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
We're even better looking in person.
Yes.
Speak for yourself.
Are we good, Theodora?
We're good now?
So we're going to do one more. We're going
Okay.
to do one more if you just give me 1 second.
Okay.
This is Supervisor Simidian. Do I need to announce my presence?
We're glad you're here, and just get ready. We're about ready to take a picture.
Great.
He's always there for the photo op.
Okay, I'm going to count to 3 again. Everybody ready? Get their smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, once again, thank you to and congratulations to Ephraim on his retirement.
Thank
The
you very
next
much.
item on our agenda is award and commendation. This is to adopt a resolution of appreciation for retired General Manager, CEO Nuria Fernandez. Before we go any farther, could I have a motion in a second, please?
So moved. Ricardo.
Second, Perellis.
Okay. I don't see any comments that we need to vote on this. So Elaine, could we do a vote?
Sure. Bert?
Bert.
Bert? I'll
Yes.
come back. Thank you.
Yes.
Carrasco? Chavez? Constantine?
Aye.
Jimenez? Jimenez? I'll come back to
Aye.
you. Thank you. Ricardo?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Perez?
Aye.
Semedian? Jones?
Aye.
Hendricks?
Yes.
I'm gonna go back to board members Chavez and Carrasco. Are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. All
Mr.
right,
Chair, just a
motion passed.
point of order. I assume Nuria isn't with us. Right
That
now.
is correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm actually going to talk about that. So under the rules and guidelines of Nuria's new job, she is prohibited from attending our meeting tonight, but we're still going to celebrate her and her many contributions that she has made. I'm going to read an abbreviated version of the resolution we just adopted. Whereas Nuria Fernandez served as General Manager and CEO of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority for 7 years and was appointed by President Joe Biden as the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Transit Administration. And whereas Nuria Fernandez held safety and security as a top priority with financial and funding stability a close second, and steadfastly navigated VTA's response to the deadly COVID pandemic. And whereas Nuria Fernandez led a creative and dedicated team that worked tirelessly with 15 local jurisdictions to prepare a framework to distribute critically needed funds over 9 categories, which led to the successful passage of 2016 Measure B with more than 70% of the vote. And whereas Nuria Fernandez ushered VTA's completion of the Bay Area Rapid Transit Service to Silicon Valley and championed VTA's proposed innovative tunneling methodology and the public-private partnership approach for the second phase of BART Silicon Valley Extension, enabling the project to serve as a model for the industry. And whereas Nuria Fernandez was responsible for the creation of VTA's Innovation Center, and whereas Nuria Fernandez made long-lasting strides in workforce development, and whereas Nuria Fernandez served as chair of the American Public Transportation Association, APTA, from 2019 to 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the VTA Board of Directors hereby commends and expresses its sincere appreciation to Nuria Fernandez for her exemplary public service as General Manager and CEO of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority from 2014 to 2021, adopted by the VTA Board of Directors this 4th day of February, 2021. And I believe Nuria is not here, but if I'm not mistaken, she has a letter or comments she'd like to have read.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nuria left a note for this board and the VTA employees, and she asked that I read it aloud for you. To the VTA board and VTA employees, these past 2 weeks have been a whirlwind of activities in my new role with the federal government, but felt it was important to take this moment and thank you for these past 7 years serving as the head of this great organization. You trusted me to lead with boldness, decisiveness, and creativity. I truly believe these qualities were the secret sauce in the many achievements we accomplished together. When I arrived at VTA in 2013, the effects of the national recession were beginning to subside, and there were clear signs of a more promising future ahead. VTA was in the early stages of building the first phase of the Rapid Rail BART extension to Santa Clara County, and the San Francisco 49ers were preparing to move into their new home in the city of Santa Clara, only to host the historic Super Bowl 50 soon thereafter. Our agency and stakeholders were also in the midst of bringing a new ballot measure to the voters that would fund transportation infrastructure improvements to enhance safety, improve mobility for all, and provide innovative transit solutions to move seniors, low-income riders, and future generations of those who would rather ride rails and buses than drive cars. You charged me with bringing Silicon Valley technology, partnerships, and products to better connect our multitude of transportation options, creating a mobility network that would solve the way we connect people to places and each other. Then, of course, there were the other dozen or so priorities that were added to my plate, but who was counting? I had the right people sitting at my table to get the job done. Looking back, I'm truly amazed at how much the organization accomplished, but I am not at all surprised. The women and men of the Valley Transportation Authority were born from this critical public service. Every new initiative, service change, or project was met with a can-do attitude, and the entire workforce embraced VTA's strategic plan tagline to create, collaborate, lead. And so we did. What we did not anticipate was a pandemic in 2020, but yet again, the employees never faltered in their commitment to our mission, our customers, and to each other. You have not skipped a beat, providing essential transit services to those who need it most, and partnering with 15 cities and counties to fund and deliver innovative transportation solutions that are critical to our post-pandemic recovery and brighter future. I will treasure this incredible experience, the lifelong friendships I have made, and the opportunity given to me to help transform the lives of people who benefit directly or indirectly from the good work of VTA. In the end, the credit belongs to the employees and their willingness to take risks and embrace change. Now, I leave you with one of my favorite passages. Quote, "I fought the good fight. I finished the race. I kept the faith," unquote. I trust that you will too. Best wishes to all for a bright and successful future. Nuria Fernandez.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, that was clearly classic Nuria comments right there. I believe staff has prepared a quick video that looks back at the last 7 years with Nuria as our GM/CEO. Okay, thank you to staff for putting that together. I hope this video tribute highlighted her contributions to VTA and her commitment to innovating mobility in our region. The video also offered a look at her commitment to VTA's greatest asset, its employees. Nuria encouraged employee development opportunities, such as the VTA Leadership Academy and the JWI Mentorship Program. She challenged employees to reach beyond their comfort zones and seek opportunities to improve their skills and broaden their networks. Nuria was a staunch supporter of initiatives that fostered diversity and inclusion. And under her leadership, VTA hosted and promoted over 50 employee events, which boosted camaraderie, embraced diversity, and increased employee engagement. Her team introduced healthy workplace initiatives that highlighted the benefits of overall well-being. We are thankful having her as our general manager for the last 7 years, and we wish her all the best in her new role. And I'm gonna actually take a moment here, and I'm just gonna assume for a second that maybe some of my colleagues might wanna make some short comments. There's no pressure. Go ahead. Member Chavez.
Thank you. I am, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the staff for that beautiful video and Evelyn for reading Nuria's letter. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate her and how proud I am of the fact that she's going to be serving the nation. And, you know, what the nation will learn is what we know, which is she's a really hard worker, very committed to public transportation, very committed to the leadership that public transportation and the role it can play in human development and in protecting the environment and in good paying jobs. And so I will miss her very much and enjoyed working with her very much.
Thank you. Member Liccardo? We can't hear you, Sam.
Me, rookie move. I agree with everything that's been said, both from Supervisor Chavez as well as our chair. I couldn't say anything more other than to say I'm just really proud to see Nuria taking on this national leadership role. And I know she's going to do great things for the country as she has for this region. And it's been a real pleasure working with her. And I think what you saw in the video was a testament to what this organization accomplished. Certainly that wasn't one person, that was an entire organization under her leadership. And I think everyone should feel proud for where we've come over the last 7 years.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else's hands, and I'm just going to add this last comment. You know, I got a phone call from Nuria about this change before others, and she went ahead and told me what it was, and I was silent. She had to go, Glenn, are you still there? Because I was just taking, it took me a few seconds to process what she was telling me. But my first response to her was, we didn't want her to leave, but this is a great personal opportunity for her. It's a great professional opportunity for her. But more importantly, it's an excellent, this is an excellent thing for the United States of America. You know, we want her, it'd be great if she could be here and continue to do the things she was doing. Everybody wanted her to be here, but being able to take her talents and skills and take that to the national level and be able to help with our national level challenges, I think that's good for America. So those were my comments that I made to her. It looks like Board Member Perales, you've got something?
Yeah, I apologize, Chair. I was late in raising my hand, and I'll be really brief. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed working with Nuria, and I think she was absolutely tremendous for this organization in this region. I happened to have an opportunity to participate in American Leadership Forum with Nuria, and so I had a chance to get to know her as a person through that. And she is even more stellar just in her regular daily life as a mother, a grandmother, a human being, as we all saw, as she was dedicated here as a general manager of VTA. And I certainly was super excited. I think for her and the opportunities that this you know, presents, definitely bummed. I think like the majority of us that we won't have her here with us here anymore, but couldn't be more happy for her and wish her all the best.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward, but I'm going to ask all my colleagues here. Now we're going to take and we're going to look forward and how we're going to move and get new things done. I'm going to move on to item number 3, public comments. This is for items that are not on our agenda. A reminder for those who want to address the board under public comment, please use the raised hand function in the app, or if you're using your phone, only press *9. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the board of directors on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 1 minute. We're allocating no more than 20 minutes for this section. The law does not permit board action or extended discussion on any item not on the agenda, except under special circumstances. And I encourage those with customer service concerns to contact our customer service department after you make your comments. The contact information is on the screen. And now we're going to start with our public comments. Anita, do you want to start our speakers, please?
We have Eugene Bradley, followed by Roland and Blair. Eugene, please go ahead when you're ready.
Evening, board members. This is Eugene Bradley, founder and CEO of Silicon Valley Transit Users. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Just want to thank the board for implementing rear door boarding and for listening to us once again for increasing bus service on several bus lines like the 22 and 68 coming on Monday. I'll address anything further in the appropriate action item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Mr. LeBrun, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to touch on the EPD application that was submitted to the VTA. Now, as you know, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. As you know, there are some serious issues with funding. One thing I want to mention to you is that the VTA actually now got a total of $225 million, which, as you may recall, last year was the total amount for the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And the reason VTA got 100% is because nobody else in the United States applied for this plan. And the reason nobody has applied for it is that they're all expecting to get more in the region of 40% from the general government versus our 25. Last point I'd like to make to you is that, as I mentioned earlier, you do not have environmental clearance for the 2 cut and cover structures. I'll be writing to the board again about what staff is doing about this.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Mr. Beekman, please go ahead when you're ready. Mr. Beekman.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Even as there are some current issues of violent crime at this time, to again offer that can become ideas that can become familiar and not repetitive, there needs to be Bay Area dialogue and local dialogue, Bay Area and local dialogue that 5+ shot spotter, eavesdropper, gunshot technology speakers at the current North San Jose Bay Area SFR station can do just about as much as the current 60+. The VTA also needs to consider how to develop public policies that can have a more immediate review period for questionable, controversial, big belly smart trash can apps like ShotSpotter that can infringe upon civil rights and civil protection. To conclude, I hope the VTA will establish some sort of advertising ethics review board and public process review for any new large advertising that is placed in the future of VTA transit hubs. Of course, all of these projects simply ask how the ideas of equity, reimagine, and peace can be a part of our good thinking and decision-making for our future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that closes our public comment section. We're moving on to public hearings. We do not have any items under item 4 here, so we're moving on to item 5, committee reports. For item 5.1, Citizens Advisory Committee, Chair Vignesh Swaminathan is here to provide a brief report.
Yes, thank you. Perfect pronunciation. Thank you so much. Good evening, Chairperson Hendricks, Vice Chair Jones, General Manager Tran, and members on the board. At our January 27 meeting, the 2000 Measure A Citizen Watchdog Committee approved the authorization to execute a contract with our new independent auditor, Crow Consulting, for compliance auditing services on behalf of the CWC. This was a significant action that would greatly assist the Watchdog Committee in fulfilling our ballot-defined responsibility of conducting an independent audit each fiscal year to ensure tax dollars are being spent in accordance with the intent of 2000 Measure A. This is a big change to us because we've had a same consultant for a few years, and this is a new consultant that we brought on, a new small consultant. Crow may now begin its compliance audit work for the fiscal year 2020 audit cycle. I will provide updates on the CWC's review of the 2000A measure expenditures at future board meetings. On our CAC agenda, the committee received a presentation from staff on the status of ongoing Santa Clara County Vehicle Registration Fee, VRF for short, program activity, which is consent agenda item 6.8 on your agenda tonight. With regards to our committee member recruitment efforts, I'm happy to report that early this afternoon, the Governance and Audit Committee ratified 2 new members to the CDAC. Tyler Kruger represents the business and labor stakeholder group and is from Morgan Hill area. And Howard Miller represents the community and societal interest groups from the Saratoga area. We still have 1 more opening, and we'll continue to accept and review applications, particularly since 4 of our transitional members will be terming out at the end of June 2021. Our next regular CAC CWC meeting will be held next week on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021 at 4 p.m. via Zoom and teleconference. Thank you, and that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Vignesh. Moving on to 5.2, our Policy Advisory Committee Chair, Kitty Moore, is here to provide a report.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Hendricks, Vice Chair Jones, and members of the board. On Thursday, January 14th, the Policy Advisory Committee elected Kitty Moore, myself, representing Cupertino, to serve as chair of the committee, and Matt Mahan of San Jose as the vice chair. We received an update on the VTA board governance process assessment at the request by the committee the previous month. We reviewed the status of projects in the Santa Clara County Transportation Fund for Clean Air County Program Manager Fund, which is item 6.7 on the February VTA board meeting agenda. We reviewed the status of ongoing Santa Clara County Vehicle Registration Fee, the VRF activity, item 6.8 on the VTA board meeting agenda for February. And we received the programmed projects quarterly monitoring report for October through December 2020. Our next PAC meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 11th, 2020 at 4 p.m. and will be held online. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Congratulations on being voted the chair. Several of us here on the board have been on the PAC and have been the chairs, so we feel for what you have. Thank you very much. 5.3, Standing Committee Chairperson's Report. The Administration and Finance Committee and Congestion Management Program and Planning Committee Chair reports are available in the online packet, and the other standing committees did not meet. The Policy Advisory Board Chairs, there are no Policy Advisory Chair reports. I'm moving on now to the consent agenda.
Chair?
Could I interject? Sorry,
I'm sorry. I missed looking up at my my windows. Member Perales.
This was standing committees for January, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
If I'm correct.
Yes.
Because the CMPP did meet. I don't know if that was missed.
No, I think
that was this is Elaine. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Board Member Perales.
Okay. I can give just a brief synopsis if that's all right.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry. And so we did, CMPP did meet and we conducted voting on our vice chairperson as Councilmember Jimenez, or Board Member Jimenez, Sergio Jimenez. And he was actually thrust into the role of chairing the meeting because I had just recently, a couple of days before, been diagnosed with Bell's palsy. And I was struggling even talking at length at that point. I'm doing much better now. But he valiantly took over the meeting, and we got a great presentation on the CMA, or the Congestion Management Agency, which not a lot of I think board members, especially new board members, are aware of that role that the VTA plays as the CMA, the Congestion Management Agency, and really a lot of the requirements that we have as the CMA And so it was a great presentation in that regard. And then received an update in regards to the VTA business plan, and then had an information item on the ongoing Santa Clara County vehicle registration fee for that meeting. And that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, and glad to see the teamwork between the members of helping each other out. And just to my colleagues, if I miss looking and don't see your hand raised, always just speak up. So that's going to take us to agenda item 6 is the consent agenda.
Chair, this is Elaine.
Mhm.
I just wanted, if I may, please, we have a couple of hands up on the public side.
Okay, let's go back to that then. Our public speakers, go ahead.
Roland, please go ahead when you're ready.
So, Mr. Chair, the first thing I'd like to remind you is Government Code Section 54954.3. Now, moving on to the CAC report, I'm going to echo what I just said at GNA, is that this auditor that was supposed to be in charge of Measure A for the last 12 years is currently your general auditor. And the point I raised at GNA is that how could Measure A possibly have got to the point where we no longer have got any capacity left for bonding for BART Phase 2 for 12 years, and somehow that auditor is now the VTA's general auditor. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Blair, please go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Hi, I wanted to note for Chairman Hendricks that he seems to be practicing a bit more of efficiency before the ideas of the public. It's time that he needs to slow down a bit and consider the public as part of the process and not fully rely on the wonderful and new efficiency of this public meeting. Thank you. Sorry to say that. I just wanted to thank yourselves for this item and to note that it's nice that with items like this that they repeat themselves. And so I kind of repeat myself here, but it makes something familiar to ourselves. And I kind of like the VTA meetings for that. With that said, to once again offer, with Nuria Fernandez leaving, I hope we can continue the ideas of how to practice openness with the new financial ideas in this time of COVID. We were learning how to do that, I feel, and it takes a lot to do that. I hope we continue those good practices and practice openness with all the financial issues that we have to worry about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other public speakers. So at this point, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. This is the consent agenda is items 6.1 through 611. Members of the public who would like to address the board on items on consent, please raise your hand now on the app or press *9 on your phone. To my colleagues, is there anyone who wants to pull an item off consent or add an item to the consent agenda? Hold on, I got to get to the right window. Somebody's got their hand up, but I can't see what it is yet.
It's me, Glenn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Sam. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. I just want to recuse myself from item 6.3 and on item 6.1, just to be able to pull it to say thank you to VTA staff.
You want to actually pull 6.1?
Or I could just say thank you to VTA staff now.
Okay, that's cool. Let's do that.
Okay, thank you, VTA staff. We really appreciate the money.
Board Chair Hendricks, this is Carlos.
Yes.
Board Member Liccardo, under what section are you recusing yourself from 6.3?
Yeah, government code section, I'll pull it up for you in just a moment. So it has to do with, I think, code section 84308.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the first thing I was asking about if we wanted to change anything on the consent, and then I was going to ask about abstentions and recusal, which Mayor Liccardo's already started. Is there anybody else who would like to, needs to recuse or abstain from any item? I'm not seeing any.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, this is Supervisor Simidian. Are you asking about all items under item number 6?
Yes.
I do have a question, if I may, about item 6.4. I had shared this question with staff ahead of time, so I think they'll be prepared to respond.
So do you just want to ask the question and not pull the item? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah,
I'm okay. I'm okay.
I'll pull the item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're gonna pull 6.4.
Right.
Okay. With that, I'm gonna now open the public comments about the consent item. So if we go to our public speakers.
We have Lance followed by Blair and then Roland. Lance, please go ahead.
Are you there?
Let's move on. Blair, please go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. We've come a long way in 5 years how to talk about openness and accountability with community technology, surveillance, data collection, privacy policies, and cybersecurity. A reminder, this purpose over the past 5 years is how a more open, shared, democratic process can work toward ideas of peace, positive sustainability, and to question how to end continual war. It is that simple. We are now at an important place, learning to define our communities with a lens of social and racial equity and reimagine. Ideas especially meant, among other things, to address the future of the prison military industrial complex. Please keep this in mind with the people of this new technology contract, as they may be only starting their journey into the future questions of equity and reimagine offered here, as many of us are. Yet some things should be incredibly familiar, peaceful, and regular to us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Roland, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing I'd like to bring to your attention that suppressing verbal public comment is one thing, but also suppressing written public comment is becoming more of an issue. I wrote earlier under item 6.9 about appointments to board standing committees. I wrote to the board earlier, essentially asking Mayor Liccardo to reconsider the appointment of Council Member Dev Davis to the Caltrain board because of what happened this morning, which was another violation of Government Code Section 54954.3. This letter is not in the packet, and this is becoming an issue. So the sooner we address this, the better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other public comments. So if we could go ahead, if I could get a motion, please. And keep in mind 6.4 we want to have pulled.
So Chair, I move that we approve all the consent calendar items except for 6.4.
Thank you.
Jones, second.
Thank you. I'm seeing no other comments. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Burt,
Yes.
Carrasco, Chavez,
Yes.
Constantine,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Liccardo,
Aye.
Montano,
Yes.
Paul,
Aye.
Perales.
Sorry, aye. Aye.
Thank you. Simedian,
Semidian, aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, let's go ahead and just take 6.4 right now. So Member Semidian, did you want to go ahead and ask your question? Or would you need something from staff first?
No, I thank you. Because we did reach out to staff ahead of time, I think I'm equipped to ask the question, which is the concern, Mr. Chairman, that I have and other members is whether or not the latitude requested in 6.4 would allow for the purchase or acquisition of surveillance technology without consideration of the privacy implications by our VTA board. My understanding from staff is that they're anticipating that, for example, if they needed a quick upgrade or repair with our CCTV, our closed circuit television cameras, that that's something they'd like to be able to move on quickly. But what I could not get a clear understanding of, and that may be my challenge, is whether or not other kinds of surveillance technology could be acquired given this authorization with privacy implications that would not come before the board for review or consideration. As you all know, there's a host of different privacy technologies out there, and I'm not sure to what extent there's a review process that ensures that privacy and security are weighed simultaneously. So let me just ask staff, would this allow for the acquisition of other kinds of surveillance technology without board engagement or review?
And I'm sure staff's ready to give you a response.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Richard Bertolin, our Chief Information Officer, to respond to that question.
Thank you.
Yes, hello. So anything that we would procure under item 6.4, the technology general store, would comply with the previously board passed CCTV policy. At this time, we don't have other surveillance or systems that you asked about in place or in progress. So this, as you mentioned, was just for systems that may break down or need emergency fixes, and anything like that would be the CCTV systems that we already have. And those would be covered by the CCTV policy previously approved by the board. I think other specific security sensitive items might better be handled in a closed session, but I would leave that to the general counsel's discretion.
Yes, but again, my question, and I'm sorry, I still didn't, I didn't grasp whether the answer was yes or no, is under this authorization, is staff authorized to acquire other types of surveillance technology different from CCTV without coming to the board?
The answer to your specific question would be no. We would only buy things that are already have approved by the board, and we would not use this to buy anything that exceeded our existing authorization under the existing CCTV policy.
Thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate the commitment on the record. I will nonetheless abstain, but I appreciate the commitment on the record, and hope that it helps to raise the issue up for consideration perhaps more fully by the board and staff at some other time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Member Smitty, looks like you've gotten a response you're satisfied with?
I have, although I will abstain on the item when the vote is called.
Okay, that's fine. Because we went ahead and pulled this item, I think we're going to go ahead and go to public comment now. If we can go to our public speakers.
Mr. Beekman, please go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you for the words of Supervisor Simidian on this item. He has a long history of working towards accountability with technology, and he asked for that here, and thank you. I hope, you know, the security officer tried to offer, you know, some semblance of, you know, what good practices Nuria Fernandez was trying to develop for the technology within the VTA. And the fact that there is a certain set of public policies that she helped develop, it's important. You know, I think she did some nice work in that area, and to respect that efforts and not short circuit it, the fact that she's left, it's important. And I think we owe Nuria responsibility to really bring out the better parts of ourselves with her departing at this time. And so again, thank you that Supervisor Simidian is here to, you know, kind of carry that weight and a thank you to that. And to conclude quickly.
Thank you. That's the end of time. Our next speaker, please. Staff, are we getting the next speaker?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we're having some technical difficulties.
No problem.
Raj, please go ahead and accept the unmute and speak when you're ready. Lance, go ahead and accept the unmute and speak when you're ready.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just have one question. Why are we still using CTCB cameras when there's IP cameras available that are more technology advanced?
Did you have anything else you wanted to share during your time for public comment?
That's just about all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think
Mr. Chair, that's it for
Yeah.
public comments.
that was the last of our public speakers. So I'm going to close the public comment section here. Is there a will of my colleagues for this item? A motion, maybe?
Move to approve.
Jones, second.
So that was Constantine for the motion and Vice Chair for second. I'm not seeing any other comments from my colleagues. So could we please have a voice vote?
Bert
Yes.
Carrasco is absent. Chavez?
Yes.
Chavez, thank you. Constantine?
Aye.
Jimenez?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Perales?
Aye.
Simidian?
Semidian abstains.
Thank you. Jones?
Aye.
Hendricks?
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That we're now at the regular agenda. Our first item on the regular agenda is item 7.1, which is to receive an overview of the Governance and Audit Committee and Auditor General duties. Stephen Flynn, the Senior Policy Advisor, is going to provide a report. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hendricks, and good evening, board members. I'm Stephen Flynn, a Senior Policy Analyst, and I provide liaison services to the Governance and Audit Committee, and my colleague, Mita Podar, the Audit Program Manager, and I facilitate the Auditor General function. So given the large number of new board members, it was decided that a quick overview of the Governance and Audit Committee and the Auditor General function would be helpful. Next slide, please. So we're going to go over the background and the history, go over the Governance and Audit Committee duties and responsibilities, as well as the Auditor General or AG function. Next slide. So the background and the history here is in 2007, former GM Michael Burns initiated the VTA organizational and financial assessment to have independent experts evaluate where VTA needed improvement. The study was performed by the Hague Group, which was comprised of transit and government experts. The Hague Group recommended that VTA establish an audit committee comprised of board members, and number two, an independent auditor general function to assist the board. These are good governance practices that incorporate the spirit of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and would assist the board in fulfilling its fiduciary duties of safeguarding VTA's financial interests, operational and brand integrity, and public perception. So in 2008, the board accepted those recommendations and established first the audit committee and second the auditor general or AG function. So 6 years later, the board added additional responsibilities to the audit committee and renamed it Governance and Audit or GNA. And then in 2015, the board selected the outsourced model for the AG function, and I'll provide more information on that later. Next slide. So Governance and Audit is one of the 5 VTA board standing committees. The membership is the board chair and board vice chair, and the chairperson of 3 specified board standing committees shown on your screen. Meeting schedule is they meet 8 to 9 times per year generally. They meet the same day as the board meeting at 4 p.m., which means it's somewhat time constrained by the board meeting starting time. And today we just finished the GNA meeting approximately less than an hour ago. Next slide. So the Governance and Audit or GNA's duties and responsibilities, it wears 2 hats. The first one is on the governance side. The primary mission is to focus on the management and coordination of the board to help guide the organization to accomplish VTA's strategic goals. Some of the major responsibilities are to review and recommend to the board policy decisions on first, the board and organizational goal setting and prioritization. Second is strategic initiative framework development. Examples are the countywide transportation plan, VTP, the strategic and business plans. The business plan is currently underway. The budget development process, which is just starting now for the biennial budget, and the board and committee processes. And an example of that is the underway board governance enhancement or BGE process. Next slide. So some of the key specific governance responsibilities, GNA is responsible for evaluating the VTA achieving its mission and goals. They're responsible for the orientation, training, mentoring process for new board members. They're also responsible for the process for annual board member self-evaluations and the annual performance evaluation of board direct reports, which are the GM, CEO, and general counsel. They also review and recommend approval of modifications to the VTA admin code, and they approve modifications to certain advisory committees, bylaws, and appointments to advisory committees and policy advisory board. And they did citizen advisory committee appointments today. Next slide. So now on to the other hat the committee wears, and this is on the audit side. So the primary mission is to oversee the activities of the Auditor General, the internal audit function, and really to manage risk. What the committee is responsible for is recommending to the board policy decisions required to fulfill the board's oversight responsibilities for, first, the integrity of the VTA financial statements, compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, and here's a key one, is assuring an effective system of internal management and financial controls, basically risk assessment and management, and this is where the Auditor General provides many services. Next one. So key specific responsibilities on the audit side is GNA reviews and recommends board approval of the annual or biennial Auditor General work plan, and that's the specific task and level of effort which the board strictly controls. And GNA did that today, and it's the next item on your agenda. They also review the results of the individual audits or assessments performed by the Auditor General, management's responses or commitments to corrective actions, and to ensure all those commitments are implemented. And finally, another major thing that they look at is the comprehensive annual financial report, or CAFR, as well as other audited financial reports. Lastly, they review the enterprise-wide risk management reports and findings. And with that, that's GNA in a nutshell. Now we go on to the Auditor General or AG function. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what's the purpose of the Auditor General? Basically to assist the board in accomplishing VTA's objectives by providing independent, systematic, and disciplined approach to evaluate, improve the effectiveness of its risk management controls and governance processes. So some of the factors for the AG function are that the AG function reports directly to the board, but is overseen and managed by GNA, the Governance and Audit Committee. The AG function has unrestricted access to all VTA function records, information systems, as well as full access and communication with board members, VTA management, and staff. This helps them complete their projects and have full independence. And the last thing is an independent consultant study previously conducted in 2015 to evaluate the potential AG service delivery models, whether that be insourced, which is VTA staff, outsourced, which are consultants, or co-sourced, which is a combination thereof. The board selected to go with the outsourced model, and that's what you currently have. However, I do want to emphasize it is the board's prerogative at any time to utilize whichever model it deems most beneficial to the organization. Okay, next slide. Okay, some of the key duties and responsibilities of the Auditor General is they develop and recommend for board approval the annual or biennial Auditor General work plan. And again, that's the next item on your agenda. Once that's approved, they assign and manage the resources required to complete the projects and tasks in the work plans. They provide audit assessment results to the board and GNA, and then also provide periodic progress reports to GNA. A key item here is that they identify operational enhancements and process improvement opportunities for consideration by the board and GNA. And lastly, as AG Scott Johnson will talk about, they are tasked with monitoring the VTA ethics hotline and investigating submissions. And with that, I'll end my report and ask if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Before I go to public comment on this, I just wanted to go ahead and make the comment that, first off, I appreciate every member who's part of the board here and the value add that they're coming to bring to the board of what we're doing. But I also want to highlight and thank the people who are part of the GNA committee. They are stepping up and providing extra leadership in terms of being chairs of the standing committees and serving on the GNA committee. So I just want to thank everybody for participating in that. Can we go to our public speakers now, please?
Mr. LeBrun, please go ahead when you're ready.
And Mr. Chair, if you actually wanted to also thank of the members of the public, I'm not going to be the one who's going to stop you. The first point I raised during GNA, which is not agendized, is I would like to see a change to the administrative code whereby the elections are conducted at the last meeting of the prior year. In other words, the current chair was elected to the previous board. And quite frankly, if that had been addressed, we wouldn't be having the very unpleasant conversation we're having right now, because potentially we might have a different chair. I did support merging the CPC and the AF. It's logical, as long as we don't lose all the historical material. I also supported moving METS to GNA. The only comment I had was about section 0.2.1.b, which had to do with pre-registration before addressing the board. That's a violation of Government Code section 50953.3. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Mr. Beekman, please go ahead when you're ready.
All right, thanks for your patience with myself. I spoke to item 6.4 and my public comment was meant for item 6.4 previously. My good story about former General Manager Nuria Fernandez is that she helped make a process more understandable about the cleaning schedules for paratransit vehicles. I hope it has set a tone how cleaning schedules and practices can be a more open and clear to paratransit drivers, ATU cleaning staff, and everyday public. To make these cleaning policies and practices more clear, open, and accountable may be considered small, but I think it can go a long way in defining the character of how the VTA will function and make decisions in this time of COVID-19 into the future. To also offer auditing ideas that of the former general manager, as we're all growing more comfortable with state funding mechanisms that can help with the community at the local level, can it be considered to altogether cancel the large advertising plans for VTA bus transit hubs at this time? And you know my feelings about open.
Okay, thank you. I think that was our last public speaker, so I'm going to close the public speaker section right there. And just to address one thing, I'll just say that I believe the board is thankful and appreciative of all public comments, not just public comments that come in related to GNA, but the public comments that we get on all the items that we deal with here on the board. So with that, do my colleagues have any questions or comments about the item we're hearing right here? I'm not seeing anyone raise any hands. So this is an information item and does not require a motion. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to item 7.2, which is to approve the Auditor General's recommended work plans and projects for the remainder of fiscal year 2021 and for fiscal years 2020 and 2023. Scott Johnson, our Auditor General, is here to provide a report. And Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Stephen, I appreciate your overview and the background that you provided. This is a unique opportunity actually in timing. So with some of the new board members, I have not had an opportunity to speak to you as your new AG. I was appointed your AG in June of 2020. By way of background, just want to let you know, my name is Scott Johnson. And prior to working at MGO, I'm a partner at MGO. I've been leading our state and local government advisory group for the past 6 years. I actually worked for a number of Santa Clara County public agencies, including the county and several cities in my formal professional career. So some of your faces are very familiar to me, and I look forward to working with the board more closely as I, along with my team, continue our work, working with VTA. So with that, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, staff, and members of the public, I'm pleased to present to you for your review and approval the Auditor General's recommended work plans and projects for the remainder of fiscal year 2021 and for fiscal years 2022 and 23. The recommended work plans, they're based on a comprehensive 3-phase risk assessment that was conducted by the AG team and feedback we received from the Governance and Audit Committee. So on slide number 2, I want to just add a little bit by way of background that Stephen provided. The Auditor General's recommended work plans and projects historically have aligned with and support VTA's strategic plans and goals by assisting the board in fulfilling its fiduciary responsibilities as well as managing risk. Now, the AG's work plans specify projects that the board authorizes the AG's office to undertake during each biannual period, along with the corresponding level of effort for each project. In April of 2019, the board approved a work plan, the biannual work plan for fiscal 20 and 21, and that work plan was developed and recommended by the prior AG firm, RSM. However, in February of 2020, RSM requested and was granted release from its contract with VTA. Therefore, through a competitive process, MGO was awarded a contract to serve as VTA's Auditor General, and specifically, I am serving that role along with my team of staff, from MGO. So we're currently in this transitionary phase since the former AG developed the fiscal 20 and 21 work plans that were approved by the board. And given this transition, our team reviewed those projects in the approved work plans, and the proposed multi-year work plan incorporates some of those projects. Others we are recommending delaying or reconsidering during the next biannual AG work plan cycle. And for those that are included in the proposed work plan, given the timing, the previously approved projects may not be at the same timing as originally planned due to this transition. So I also want to mention attachment A that's attached to the staff report. To the board report includes the project listings, the related scope. It also indicates those projects that were previously approved by the board, the year they were originally planned, and our recommendations on amending their timing or deferral or for future consideration. On the next slide, slide 3, per the board's direction, when MGO's contract was approved, the first project undertaken by the new MGO AG team was to complete a comprehensive risk assessment using 2 professional frameworks pursuant to our contractual requirements. And these frameworks are widely accepted as current best practices in the audit profession. And these professional standard requirements noted were not required of the previous AG. So there is a bit more level of effort and a bit more work and much more professional and technical overview of in conducting this risk assessment. So by using those 2 frameworks in a 3-phase approach, our AG team assessed the internal structure of the organization, as well as the internal and external risk and opportunities through this multi-dimensional view, looking at internal controls, risks, and opportunities. So on the next slide, slide 4, this slide provides Yeah, it provides a graphical view of this three-phase approach I mentioned that we took in conducting the risk assessment. I'm not going to go through all the details of this slide, but I will say every step of the way after each phase, we went back to the Governance and Audit Committee with the results and discussed what the next step would be on that phase and how we would perform that phase of the risk assessment. So phase one, we got familiar with VTA. We conducted document reviews, as you can see some of the documents here that I listed. And we also did a preliminary assessment. And then phase two, that was really the body of work conducting the risk assessment. It included interviews, the review of the former AG work plans, looking at projects, reports. We developed a risk register. We developed a risk heat map. We developed a listing of potential projects to include in the work plan. And then we presented all those results to the G&A committee. And then finally in phase three, it included more detailed scoping of the projects that we recommended, further feedback from the chair and the vice chair pursuant to direction from the G&A committee in December. And then we developed estimates of the level of effort for each project. We developed a proposed work plan, and we developed a preliminary project schedule by year. So on the next slide, slide 5, in regards to the work we've completed to date, I thought it was important to kind of give you some context. Our team, first of all, we'd like to publicly acknowledge how VTA representatives were very responsive, very cooperative, forthcoming, and collaborative. We received a genuine sense of open, honest, knowledgeable, and passionate feedback from all the participants at all levels of the organization. You know, it's really important for me, and formerly working for government agency as a finance director or as an administrator or a controller treasurer, that you have an independent eye. And sometimes some of the clients that I've worked with in the past through my current capacity at MGO, they're kind of reluctant to work with auditors. But what I will say is that so far, the staff at VTA and the board and other members that we've interviewed and been in contact with have been extremely responsive and cooperative. So that's a real good sign. I really want to publicly acknowledge and thank Mita Podar and Stephen Flynn as the liaisons for assisting our team in this process. It really has been a great partnership. We have to be independent and objective, but it is also a partnership. So this risk process, this slide provides some context of the level of effort and the participation for the key elements of the risk assessment. So you can see here, you know, the document review process, policies, procedures, financial reports, budgets. We reviewed former AG work plans, as I mentioned earlier. We conducted surveys. 50 participants responded. We had a 73% response rate, and this was during the early stages of COVID. So we looked at that as a really good response rate. And then we interviewed over 50 participants, either individually or in groups, through our interview process in assessing, you know, the risk for VTA. So on the next slide is the risk. Just want to talk about the risk register and the heat map. As we were going through this risk assessment, we identified over 200 risks. There were issues, concerns, ideas, and opportunities. So we populated this internal risk register with each one of those identified risks. And then we had to narrow it down. We grouped them into 27 risk themes. And some, quite frankly, were not appropriate for an AG work plan, but others, when we looked at them, for example, the governance model for the board, that, you know, you're dealing with that now. You had a comprehensive report and you're working through some of those initiatives. So we did not include that as a project. So we identified 15 candidates as potential AG projects. And some were consistent with what the board had already approved for the work plans for fiscal 20 and 21. And then we developed this risk-based heat map. We ranked the 15 projects on the heat map and we rated them. And so the ratings were from 1 to 5. And if we move to the next slide, you'll see the risk heat map. that it's in your packet. But these are the 15 projects and we identified through the risk assessment. And by the way, this heat map is also included in attachment A of our report. So through the use of this risk heat map, we plotted the risk ratings based on our professional judgment assessment of risk. And we looked at impact. Typically, you look at risk impact and the likelihood of it happening without any mitigating factors. And so the ranking, as I mentioned, is from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest impact or likelihood, 5 being the highest impact or likelihood. And you'll note that there are a couple of bubbles where there's more than one project listed in that bubble, and that's because the overall risk rating was the same for those projects. So we put them in that bubble to indicate that. And you'll note here that as you look at the risk heat map, to the far top right, those are the projects that we listed as the highest risk. And the highest risk item that we identified, and almost everyone we talked to in the surveys are concerned about the long-term fiscal sustainability of VTA, and a lot of it due to COVID, but some of it even hopefully after COVID is over and done with. So that was the highest ranking. And then you'll see here the other rankings and how they fit within the heat map. So moving to the next slide. Basically, as I mentioned, this is our recommended Auditor General work plan for the rest of this year and for the next 2 years. We developed this based on the results of the risk assessment, as well as input that we received from GNA. And per direction of GNA during the December meeting, we also met and received further input from the chair and the vice chair as we developed this work plan. Now, today's action is to request approval to amend the fiscal 21 work plan, because as I mentioned, the board had already approved the work plan for fiscal 21, and also to approve it for fiscal 22-23. Typically, it's a biannual work plan that is moved forward through the AG's office that's approved by the board. However, given this transition, we're basically picking up this year, fiscal 21, and then adding on fiscal 22 and 23. And then starting in 24, we would recommend going back to the biannual cycle of every 2 years. On the next slide, this is a summary of 12 projects that we're recommending in this work plan cycle from fiscal 21 to fiscal 23. Now you can see here, we've also identified those projects that were already approved by the board in a previous fiscal year work plan for the AG. Some of them were approved in fiscal 19 that had already been started by the former AG, but they weren't completed. And others were for fiscal 20 and 21 that have not yet been started. So we are recommending to continue some of those. However, there are others that we are recommending deferring that were previously approved. So this is basically a snapshot for the 3 years. You'll also notice that some of them have multiple parts, and that's because of the timing of when we can start on them and what our budget is. And so we're trying to be very strategic and mindful and fiscally prudent in regards to the work plan and the rolling out of those projects. So on the next slide, this is the schedule of projects for future consideration. Some of them that were identified in the risk assessment that we conducted, others that were in work plans from the former AG that we would recommend deferring them and reconsidering them in the next AG work plan cycle. You'll note here that none of those projects, by the way, the risk level is noted here and on the previous slide. And the risk level for these projects, none of these projects were identified to be in the high risk level. They were in the medium high or a medium risk. There were none actually through their risk assessment NRs that were in the low risk category that we identified that were remaining or outstanding. So on the next slide, slide 11, so the next steps, as was previously mentioned, we did go over the work plan with the G&A committee. The G&A committee did provide feedback. They did take action to modify the work plan to take one project out, and that is the Transit Partnership Project, because it's recommended that the Mineta think tank actually maybe have them take a look at that and do a study related to transit partnerships, because they are definitely the subject matter experts in regards to transit. And then finally, we're looking forward to your feedback, and I'm here and available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Could you, before I go to public comments here, could you go ahead and could we get staff to put slide 9 up? Because I just want to clarify what the change was that the G&A committee did prior to this meeting. The item that Scott mentioned that we want to change is the third item that's on this slide, the Bay Area Transit Partnership. And as he said, what we want to do is find a way to try and be able to accelerate and get the work product of this done faster. But I believe here what we're talking about, what we're going to ask the board to do in this item is to approve this work plan, and you're essentially approving the work plan without that one item and approving the overall dollar numbers that are associated with this, because it's G&A that's actually doing the prioritization and selection of the work items. And did I state that correctly, Stephen?
Basically, yes, you did. It is to remove this item and then to look and reprioritize and see if there is another project that should go in its place.
Okay. So if you guys have any questions about that, we'll get to that when we come to colleagues' comments. But let's first go to public comments for this. So staff, if we could hear from our public.
Mr. Beekman, please go ahead when you're ready.
To speak to this work plan of 2022-23. I think open public policies and its ideas of how everyday community and local government agencies can make decent, more honest connections at this time can be incredibly important and innovative at this time. It seems the VTA will be counting on San Jose for the work to define ideas of racial and social equity and in how to define the future of bicycle and pedestrian trails for a city. I think the VTA has to take part more in the ideas of reimagined equity and green sustainability. And the VTA has to better develop bike and pedestrian projects in lower income neighborhoods of South Bay cities that they have been considering long before COVID-19. Please consider to keep financial auditing open, accessible, and intelligent in this era of COVID-19. And please note, East European countries are building their future cybersecurity that invites everyday community as how to define a future of peace, not war. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. LeBrun, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm probably going to echo what I said earlier, but when I see a slide that says VTA staff were responsive, cooperative, forthcoming, and collaborative, well, of course they were, because MGO have been with the VTA since 2008. They were actually the auditor for Measure A for 12 years. And last year, the minor issue of familiarity was raised. So now we go to the slide that basically glowing red at the top right is saying fiscal sustainability and what happened to Measure A. And now Measure A is so far down the hole that we no longer have any bonding capacity left for BART Phase 2. My question to MGA is very simple. You were the auditor for 12 years. Why didn't you warn the board? Why did you fall asleep at the switch? And what's going to change moving forward?
Okay, thank you. I think that was our last public speaker.
Yes.
So I'm going to close the public speaker section and I'm going to come back. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman, this is Supervisor Samiti, and I have one quick question for the auditor and then perhaps a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, this is Board Member Simitian and Supervisor Simitian. If I understood the report correctly, looking at the Measure B, 2016 Measure B, it's identified as medium risk, but the suggestion is that we not ask the auditor to take a look at it until 2024. Do I have that understanding correct?
Yes, Member Simitian, the reason you're correct, the reason that we're making that recommendation is because VTA has already hired a separate auditor to do compliance work in regards to Measure B. So we thought it would be prudent to let the Citizens Oversight Committee and the auditor do their work, and then we would recommend coming in after to look at the processes, procedures, controls, and so on related
Thank
to
you.
Measure B.
That's helpful. And Mr. Chairman and colleagues, through the chair, that the auditor's comment about the Oversight Committee is precisely the issue I wanted to ask about. If I'm reading the materials available correctly, I think there are at least 2 vacancies on that Oversight Committee at the present time. And my understanding is that it's the custom and practice for that committee to meet quarterly, last meeting in October of last year. And I couldn't find on the website any indication of a meeting schedule for this year. It may just be that there hasn't been a meeting schedule established. But to the auditor's point, if we are in fact not going to ask the auditor to take a look at it till 2024, relying on others to do that oversight, including but not limited to the Citizens Oversight Committee, I'm just anxious that we make sure that that committee is fully has a full complement of members and that there's a meeting schedule. Perhaps staff can clarify a little bit the status of those 2 items.
Mr. Chair, this is Stephen. If I might,
go ahead.
I can provide clarification on this. Yes, the 2016 Measure B Citizens Oversight Committee is actively involved in having the independent compliance audit of 2016 Measure B conducted. The audit, since it's a catch up of fiscal 17 through 19 and then fiscal 20, is taking a little longer. However, this committee appointed their compliance auditor, Moss Adams. We have meetings scheduled for March 3rd and I think March 24th, at which time they will review the draft audit, and then at the final meeting they'll accept that audit.
The final meeting being when again, if I may, through the chair?
I can give you the specific dates. From memory, I think it's the 24th. It'll be
of March. Mr. Flynn, excuse me.
Stephen, he's asking if it's in March.
Yes, well, the first meeting is, I believe, March 3rd. They're all the first Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. And the second one is on the 24th, if memory serves.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chair,
And
this is Elaine, if I may, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we have some schedules that are already penciled in the calendar for the Measure B Citizens Oversight Committee. Stephen is correct. We have 2 meetings in March, and then we have another one scheduled for April, July, and October. And at their first meeting in March, they will be adopting their meeting schedule. At that time, we will be posting all their scheduled meeting on the website.
great, thank you. Through the chair, that's helpful. And then are there in fact a couple of vacancies, and is there anything we can do to make sure that those vacancies are filled if I'm reading the vacancies right?
Mr. Chair, this is Elaine again, if I may.
Yes.
Board Member Simitian is correct. We have a couple of vacancies on the Oversight Committee. The first one is under the category of Educational Administration Professional, and the other vacancy is for the retired federal state administrative law judge or mediator or arbitrator.
And Mr. Chair, if I might add, we have recently received an application for the education administrator position, and it will be forwarded to the board chair very soon.
And as always, any board members here, if they know members in the public who might be able to fill these positions, please let those members of the public know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we ask for a report back, either on or off agenda, as to the schedule and the progress made in filling those vacancies, just so we know that it's happening on a timely basis?
Yeah, we can ask staff to get a written report that comes out, and if they've got that information prior to the next board meeting, they can come out to the board members in advance.
I thank you again, and I just, for colleagues who wonder why I'm delving into this relatively obscure area, it's because if we're going to rely on these folks to do the oversight and not have the primary auditor engaged until 24 on these issues, I do think it's important that we have a full complement of folks on the job and a calendar that is clear for their work. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the auditor.
Okay, thank you. And before we go to other members, GM, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. In regard to the vacancy for the retired federal state judge or mediator or arbitrator, I know that our office had tried to reach out to the court and the presiding judge. We've issued a letter that we asked them to send out to the members of the Santa Clara County Bar Association to see if we could have someone interested and fill out an application and be part of the oversight committee. So we are definitely trying to get interest there from our bar association. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Member Burt.
Yes, thank you. And forgive me if I have two questions, and if my questions are somehow already in the report, I couldn't find it. The first is regarding any risks of revenue shortfalls from BART operations, and is that within the Bay Rapid Transit partnerships or under any of the other audit items?
Thank you, Member Burt. That would be an area that we would look at when we're looking at the long-term fiscal sustainability, because part of that is looking at the revenue stream and the trends in regards to revenues.
Yeah, I was wondering if it might be there. And is that one of the designated and focus areas of that particular audit?
Yes, it is.
And the second question is on the scope and the timing of the audits. To what degree, and this is a question either of the committee or the auditor, to what degree are those things constrained by the budget allocated for audits versus the prioritization that is implied in the heat map?
Well, this is Scott Johnson, your Auditor General. I can respond to that. We tried to put this work plan together mindful of the budget and also there is a cap and an average per our contract that we have with VTA, given that we're outsourced. So I wanted to, if you look at slide 9 and look at the items that are listed there on top, those are all those are the ones that are high or medium high risk. And so we really took that into consideration, what the risk level was. But we're also, I also mentioned we're also recommending doing some of these projects in parts, where that we could get started on, like the long-term fiscal sustainability, we can get started on it this year and do part 2 next year. So we're kind of piecing part of the scope out so that we could do these as soon as possible, but also be mindful of the budget constraints.
Well, I appreciate that we do have significant budget constraints, and this is maybe the next part of the question is directed more at the committee, is to what extent have we had considerations of whether we may need to increase the budget of the committee to accelerate some of these audits if we really think that we do have a risk that we want to have a better understanding of?
So this is Glenn. I'll just go ahead and say, I think if there were items that we felt needed to be done now, and that if budget was the real constraining factor, you'd probably see us come back and ask for additional budget. And, this is where I think going back to the one item we did pull out, which was this partnership piece, is we're essentially saying we need to find a different way to get that done faster. And that may, in fact, cause some other budget request that has to happen. But, and I'll let my colleagues speak up also in G&A. I don't think we're trying to work within the budget here, but I don't think any of us felt that that was a constraining factor that would prevent us from getting something done right away if we felt that's what was necessary. And do my colleagues want to add anything to that from G&A?
I'll just say, Chair, that I agree with your assessment that the intent was never to constrain any potential projects if it was warranted. It was just we were working within the budget that we had available to make those decisions and trade-offs.
Back to you, Member Burt.
Well, thank you. I guess Board Member Jones kind of captured my concern about we do have trade-offs, and I just want to make sure that in the committee's sense of obligation to stay within the budget constraints, that we're not trading off things that we might really be dollars well spent at this time. But I'll defer to the committee on that. But I just wanted to really make sure that we're looking at that, including the item that I had mentioned under fiscal sustainability and that risk to operations from ridership shortfalls that may occur from the BART system.
Okay, thank you. Member Montano, you had your hand up. Did you still want to say something? Your hand's gone down.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I did, I changed my mind, but now that you called on me, I'll go ahead and ask a question. So I just want a point of clarification. So is the CAC Oversight Committee for Measure B, is it reflective of the county? For example, is there fair and equal representation from all sectors of the county, the north, south, and so forth? So that's, and then also, is there an oversight committee for Measure A as well? Thank you.
Stephen?
Yes, the answer to your question, both questions, is yes. There is a long-standing oversight committee for 2000 Measure A. It's the Citizens Watchdog Committee, has been in service since the revenue started being collected in 2006. And there is the separate 2016 Measure B Citizens Oversight Committee. Both of those, every effort is made to have geographical equity as well as diversity. But a lot of it comes down to is who steps up to apply. It's the truth of the matter is we sometimes have to do outreach to get applicants, and we could always we welcome the help of all our board members.
Is there someone from North County, so my sector of the county, as a representative there?
On the Measure B Citizens Oversight Committee?
Correct.
Yes, I know one person lives in Palo Alto, and another in Sunnyvale.
Okay, thank you.
That's just anecdotal in my dealings with them, but yes, we try to have very cognizant of trying to have North County, South County representation.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Liccardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, great to have you working at VTA. Good to see you again. I'm glad you're on Team VTA. Appreciate the report. Hey, as I think about the last half decade here at VTA, the two episodes where I felt like, our organization, some weaknesses were really exposed with regard to fraud, one involving outreach and one involving the subcontractor that was using old routers and switches on BART phase 1, in terms of really costly, damaging episodes where there were breaches and oversight of some kind. And yet, as I look at the risk assessments, procurement, contracting, processing, monitoring, and capital budget and project controls are both ranked medium risk, and there are 2 categories above that in risk. So I guess at the risk of sounding like the general who's fighting the last war, I'm a little concerned that we have some weaknesses that have been exposed in our organization and oversight in areas that we don't have really elevated levels of risk identified. I'm just kind of curious why you believe those would fit into the orange as opposed to the dark orange or the red.
Well, thank you, Member Liccardo. The reason, so I, as a former finance director that had procurement reporting to me, I understand what you're saying. We have been working with the VTA procurement manager, who's relatively new, and he's putting in quite a number of improvements, augmentations, changes, updating policies, and so on. So we felt it was appropriate to give him that time as, that a new, fresh eye in looking at, the whole procurement process. The other thing I do want to point out is that one thing that we added here, I didn't really go over into detail, starting next year, we recommended to GNA to give the Auditor General some flexibility to what we call spot audits. And those spot audits would be more limited scope type of audits in specific areas. So the areas, Member Liccardo, that you referred to, those could potentially be candidates for these spot audits. And when I have the opportunity to have my one-on-ones with each of the board members periodically, and if any issues are raised, those would be candidates that I would pursue a spot audit on, as well as any other issues that I'm aware of. In addition to that, the GNA has a supplemental fund, and as the chair mentioned, where they could then allocate specifically to the Auditor General to perform special projects in case any of these issues raise up, and there's a concern in a particular operational area in VTA, then we can have some flexibility. So we'll have flexibility with funding through GNA, and we'll also have flexibility related to the spot audits.
Okay, so appreciate that, Scott. So I'm interpreting what I think I've heard from you about the procurement process as, hey, you feel like there have been some fixes that have been put in place and we've got new leadership in that role, and that may reduce the risk. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And then with regard to capital construction oversight, given that other, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, may I speak on that? So as you'll notice here on this list, the largest project that I'm aware of that VTA is undertaking is, the BART phase 2, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so as you see here, we're recommending a 2-part process initially to look at the contract administration and the construction cost assessment. We'll be doing specific testing in regards to expenditures related to BART phase 2, as well as how the contracts are being administered and monitored. In addition, you'll see that we've added a part 3 on the out years that should be under consideration. So I'm anticipating that as long as BART phase 2 exists, we would come in as your Auditor General and look at on an iterative basis as they're going along on that particular project. Now, that construction project that you mentioned that's in that outer year, that was in the former AG's work plan. Again, I think that is important, but I think that looking at specific areas, focused areas that we can do through the spot audits on contract administration. One other thing I'll mention, and that is that as was noted earlier, we're also monitoring the ethics hotline. And in that ethics, through the ethics hotline, members of the public and anyone at VTA can submit a report to the Auditor General through the hotline if they have any concerns. We'll review that. We usually will, our procedure now we set up, we'll vet that through the agency counsel's office because there might be a confidentiality issue. But we actually have two, which I can't talk about, we actually have two investigations that we're conducting now as a result of reports that we receive through the ethics hotline. So that's another avenue, to look at fraud and potential fraud. Quite frankly, I have presented as a professional over a dozen presentations on mitigating fraud in local government. And the most frequent way of catching fraud is through tips that you get. It's very hard to detect fraud as long as you have the proper controls in place. But the hotline is just another avenue that the public has, as well as anyone at VTA. If they have any concerns, if you see something, they need to say something to the hotline or go up through the chain of command at VTA.
Okay, fair enough, Scott. And I appreciate your point. I would just, emphasize BART is only, for example, a quarter of our Measure B budget. There's a lot of other capital projects. So it will, I think it'd be important at some point for us to be able to take a look at our supervision controls that are in place on other capital projects. But point is well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Chavez.
Thanks. I just wanted to make one point to my colleagues, and that is that one of the actions that I asked that we remove and ask for another partner to take a look at is our partnership with MTC and our partnership with other partner organizations. And the reason for that is that we're going through a process right now to draw down CARES dollars, and the long-term relationship we've had with MTC and the resources that the South Bay receives, I think is really important for us to better understand. And so I think back to Scott's point, I think there's some, and perhaps this is a little bit of what Supervisor Simitian was raising, is that there may be instances where we need to pull out projects and potentially find partners who can also be of assistance. I think the work plan that Scott and his team have is really deep, very robust, and is going to take some time. And they're relatively new. I know they've had done other work for us. They're relatively new in this position. So in any case, I'm just going to reinforce to staff the importance of looking to MTI or other partners that could help us do that quick research and assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, looks like a member of the public has put their hand up, but I believe we already closed the public hearing, public comment section portion of this. So are there any other comments or questions from my colleagues? Not seeing any comments or questions. Is there a will of my colleagues, a motion?
Jones, so moved.
Second.
That was a second by Montano.
Yes.
If there are no other comments or questions, could we please have a vote?
Mr. Chair, this is Elaine. I just wanted to confirm that the motion is to approve the work plan with taking out the Bay Area Transit Partnership. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Bert? You're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Carrasco is absent. Chavez?
Yes.
Constantine?
Aye.
Jimenez?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Montano?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Perales?
Aye.
Simitian?
Simidian, aye.
Thank you. Jones,
Aye.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry, Carrasco's here.
Oh, and your vote, Board Member
Aye.
Carrasco? Thank you.
Thank you.
awesome. We're now
Thank
moving
you.
on to other items. Item 8.1 is the general manager's report. Evelyn, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Can we get the next slide, please? The next one. Thank you. Actually, one more. Thank you. I want to start by bringing you up to date on some of the conditions locally in relation to COVID-19 pandemic. On January 25th, the governor lifted the statewide stay-at-home order that was issued in early December. Santa Clara County followed suit with the counties staying in the purple tier. The county kept the safety measures and protocols for public transit in place, including wearing masks on vehicles and enforcing social distancing measures. On February 1st, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued an order mandating a mask wearing on all public transportation systems. It's now a violation of federal law. Free COVID-19 testing continues in collaboration with ATU and the County Health Department. That's rotating among VTA divisions. On January 27th, about 120 employees took advantage of testing offered at our North Yard division. And we also had a good turnout yesterday at VTA's Chaboya division. Next slide, please. So vaccinations are underway in Santa Clara County for healthcare workers and individuals over the age of 65. The 65-year-old threshold was put into place last week. Prior to that, only those 75 and older were admitted to receive COVID vaccine. And VTA has proactively advocated for transit workers to be prioritized in receiving the vaccine. The rollout of the vaccine is being administered by the state, and county and VTA has no authority over who receives it, but we still continue to work closely with the county regarding the implementation of the vaccine rollout. So public transit workers were initially included in phase 1B, tier 2 of the county plan for vaccinations. VTA submitted a vaccine rollout plan to the county on January 21st. In anticipation of that phase 1B implementation, and VTA's plan established a couple of, well, 3 tiers for vaccination. So the first one would be frontline employees to interface with the general public on a daily basis and employees over the age of 75. Maintenance personnel at yards and shops and employees over the age of 65 and employees with underlying medical conditions, which increase the risk of serious life-threatening complications from COVID-19. And then the last would be the general administrative personnel. We understand that that might change, and the state's already looking at switching from this tier approach implementation to the age-based approach, and we'll keep you updated as we understand how that's going to be rolled out. Next slide, please. Since the county's return to purple tier, VTA announced earlier this week that additional safety measures for our customers and employees would be added, while also looking to further reduce behaviors that may be contributing to the rise in positive cases among our VTA frontline workers. Earlier, I had mentioned the stricter federal mandatory mask order while on or waiting for transit, which reinforces currently our local mandate and remains a top requirement for us to operate safely. A reminder that we are increasing frequency on 7 of our bus routes to reduce the number of passenger pass-ups and still maintain the social distance requirements as the economy begins to open up. And those changes go into effect on Monday, February 8th. And also on Monday, February 8th, VTA will test rear door boarding and pause fare collection to further reduce customer operator interactions. We will closely monitor how this is going to impact the positive rate of infection of VTA employees while also monitoring compliance with existing safety policies and rules by deploying compliance officers at VTA divisions and in the field. Just as a reminder, in July of last year, VTA implemented its 10-point plan, which outlines actions to strengthen trust in riding transit, including frequent cleaning and sanitation of vehicles and work areas, personal protective equipment, face coverings, social distancing, ventilation, and touchless fares. This continues to be our roadmap. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Operating Officer, David Hill, to provide an update on those safety protocols that we have taken. David?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Yes, we can.
oh, okay, great. Thank you. David Hill, Chief Operating Officer. Next slide, please. For our employee personal protective equipment, we have our face masks, face shields, hand sanitizer, gloves, seat covers, and full coveralls. On the right, you see a picture of a mock-up of all of the different PPE for our employees. And we kind of wanted to have something that would attract everyone's attention. So that's not a person that's sitting down, but it is all of the employee personal protective equipment that we have. Next slide. Customer safety. We have face masks on board and also hand sanitizers on board. And if you'll notice, both the hand sanitizer holder as well as the holder for the mask was not something we could buy anywhere. So our creative employees, who are very talented, they made it from scratch. They actually took a napkin holders that you use in restaurants and configured it to hold the mask and then attach the hand sanitizer. And as Evelyn stated, we enforced our mask policy: no mask, no ride. Next slide, please. At our divisions, we were really concerned about safety. So what we did is we put outdoor canopies on the outside to ensure social distancing, as well as lights in the evening time as well, so that our employees would not congregate together and could observe the social distancing outside of the divisions. Now, you may ask, well, when they're outside, how could we call them to come into work? Well, a number of things. One, we could use their cell phone. Two, we had a paging system very similar to the ones that are used in restaurants. This allowed the employees to be on the outside, take a walk, or even go to their cars until they were needed. Next slide. On the inside of the divisions, we also installed plexiglass. On the left side, you'll see plexiglass partitions that were around the work area desk. And on the right side, we installed plexiglass in the break rooms. We had social distancing and also a way to further isolate our employees. Next. Next slide, please. On our vehicles, it's very, very important that we adhere to the social distancing and also concerned about keeping our customers safe as well. The first picture shows the blocked off seating that we have on our rail cars, as well as in our public buses. And also we provide in-service sanitation where possible at terminals or ends of the lines. And also our paratransit drivers, we actually put a plastic bubble around them to help with the social distancing on our vehicles. Next slide. Clean air. Everyone wants clean air. So we installed new MERV 7 filters on our 40-foot Gillig buses, and we're in the process now of fitting our 60-foot buses with the new MERV 7 filters, which are much stronger and traps a lot more particles that are in the air at any given time. Next slide. On our buses, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a plastic shield. That is because we didn't have permanent shields, and we sought a way to separate our operators from our customers. So our employees in the upholstery shop and some of our mechanics, they came up with this creative idea when this is actually a shade that you can pull down. At the top, you push one button and it goes up like a shade that you normally would have. So this gave some flexibility for our operators until we get the permanent barriers. Now this is on our 40-foot Gilligs. On our 60-foot Arctics, which is in the right-hand side, it shows you a picture of the permanent barriers that have already been installed on all 75 of our 60-foot buses. The configuration for the Gilligs are different. We expect to have the prototypes in this month. And once we get the prototypes in, then we'll order the parts and we'll rapid install all of the permanent barriers so that our fleet will have permanent barriers 100%. And that ends my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, David. I think we're going to let Evelyn handle the rest of her stuff, and then we'll go to, well,
Yes. Yeah.
and then we'll go to colleague questions.
Thank you, David. I'm going to next invite Takis Salpayas, our Chief BART Program Delivery Officer, so he can present or provide you with a status update on the BART project.
Thank you, Evelyn. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have very quick update for you. Can I see the slide there? Or, yeah, Elaine, yeah. I just wanted to tell you that, as you know, on January 11th, VTA announced another 100 million for us for the project. Now this plus the previous 125, we are 225, still on the lower end of the 25% of the total project. And that's what we're working with them. Right away, I'm happy to tell you, and we give you better update with more details next month, that we did make the first offers to 6 properties. I would say big budget properties. And that is a milestone, as you all understand, in our business, to really make offers like this. And we're gonna take you through. The VTA and BART working groups, we are 75 to 80% done in finalizing the criteria, the books, all of you know, which will be part of the bidding documentation. Now we are down to 20%, and we're gonna take a couple more months to finish this, maybe 2.5. Why? We are on the new segment now. We are on the 48-footer inside the tunnel, and the adage connecting from the stations, which BART does not have any existing criteria on that. But we're working together to come up with this design criteria. And when we finish this, we're gonna have all the, everything we need to put part of our bidding documentation. Just a couple updates for you on the third-party agreements, which, as you know, VTA has deemed them critical. Today, we received from Sacramento the final agreement for our internal review from Caltrans. This is considered a critical agreement. Some of you recall back in October, we executed a master agreement with Caltrans, but then we go to individual agreements. This pertains to the locations where the BART project goes under the routes of 101, 87, and 880. Very sensitive areas, how our tunnel is gonna go underneath it. And the agreement, we're gonna start reviewing it tomorrow. I'm very optimistic we're gonna reach an agreement with Caltrans. City of Santa Clara, you know that back in October, the City Council approved our agreement, the overall master agreement, and then now we're producing the cooperative agreements. Just 2 days ago, working the last 2 months with the Santa Clara city staff, we prepare the new cooperative agreement and we send it to the city staff. I'm optimistic maybe in 6 to 8 weeks, I will go back to the city council with the city staff and present the final agreements. And with the city of San Jose, we, as you know, we do have a master agreement with the city. We executed that back in October, mid-October, I don't remember the date, I think October 15, 16. And now we're going through the individual agreements. We have established together, the city and VTA schedule. February 12th is when we're gonna produce our new agreements to send to the city. That's all. I only wanted to tell you, take 10 minutes to brief you of how we're doing with BART. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Takis. Can we get the next slide, please? So VTA is celebrating Black History Month throughout the month of February by highlighting the lives of the many Black Americans who are making history today. There's a long list, and our hub website will feature 5 people each week of the month, including our first Black Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, Reverend Raphael Warnock, the first Black US Senator from Georgia, and Amanda Gorman, the first National Youth Poet Laureate. That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think at this point right here, we're going to take, see if there's any questions from my colleagues. We'll be taking public comments for 8.1, 8.1A, and 8.1B once we finish the 8.1B item. So I got to get on the right screen, sorry here. Member Burt.
Yes, thank you. Just one question on the filtration on the buses. It's great that it's being upgraded MERV 17 or MERV 7, which helps with particulate filtration. But my understanding is that we have to go to MERV 13 to have any real benefit on filtration of aerosols that may be COVID containing. Also that we can't necessarily go up with a given motor to whatever filter we would like to. So I didn't know whether we've had an examination of whether we can go to a denser filter or whether that would require additional equipment upgrade and whether that's feasible. Because that's a pretty significant factor in terms of COVID air quality and safety.
Okay.
I think David is, oh.
Okay. Yes, we've looked at the MERV 13. When you look at the MERV 13, what it really does is it restricts airflow, period, coming through the filter. It makes it really, really tough. So on our HVAC systems, it's trying to suck air in, and what it will do is just burn up the bearings and you won't have any airflow at all. We're currently in talks with one of our partners to see, is there a way that we can upgrade to the MERV 13, but it will take some significant changes, and we still have to have air in order to flow through the motors itself. So if we tried to suck it through the MERV 13 right now, what would happen? It would just burn up the bearings and you wouldn't have any airflow at all.
Right, I understand that dynamic between the filter density and the strength of the motors. And I assume that these motors can't withstand the greater density of MERV 13s. There have been in stationary structures, there's been a recognition that they're actually high flow MERV 13s that a lot of facilities thought they couldn't upgrade to 13 and they were able to with the high flow, but that may not be the case on the buses.
Right. Well, we're still looking at it again, and we're looking if if we can find a way to get to 13, we most certainly will do it.
Thank you.
Next, Member Perales.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And sorry, this is not a question, just a comment. I want to say thank you to Evelyn for the report, but more importantly, for stepping into this role. And we're really wearing two hats for us right now. I think you've proven yourself well over the years. So I think at least me personally, I'm very confident in this interim role of the multiple hats that you're having to play, but appreciate the update that you just gave. Didn't really skip a beat on really, I think, what we were hearing previously from Nuria. So I just wanted to say thank you, Evelyn.
Awesome. Next is Member Montano.
Thank you, Chair Hendricks. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Davidson, I think his name was. I'm really impressed with the ingenuity and the creativity that the frontline workers have done. I was very, very impressed. And so I just want to thank you for doing such an outstanding job. And so that the next question, is that being done on our light rail and BART? Thank you.
Okay. On our light rail, yes, we're doing the same. On BART, I can't answer that, but I would assume that they're doing something similar. We all are working in collaboration and doing all that we possibly can. And thank you for complimenting the employees. We have the best employees that have really come to work through all of this.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other of my colleagues' hands raised right now. So Evelyn, would you like to do 8.1b?
For 8.1b, it's a government affairs update. A written report was provided to the board members and is included in the online agenda packet. Also, the security statistics and the preliminary ridership information is also on the online packet. And that concludes 8.1b.
Okay, we will now take public comment on items 8.1, 8.1a, and 8.1b. And it looks like we have some public speakers queued up.
Before I pull up the public speakers, I'd like to announce that we have received additional public comment, which is on the portal and in the agenda packet. We have you're welcome. We have Mr. LeBron, Eugene, Blair, John, and Huskar. Roland, please go ahead when you're ready.
So first of all, thank you for the report on the frontline employee safety. I was actually going to echo Director Peralez's comment until I realized that the update on BART is not on the agenda, because I would have written to this. With regard to what Mr. Salpeus is doing in terms of environmental clearance, it's very simple. He's calling this progressive design build. And he quotes, "It should be noted that certain design elements may require further environmental analysis under SEQA and NEPA, which to the extent required will be completed prior to approval by VTA of any contract that includes any such design elements." But you know what? He's going to the FTA with an FGA. The other correspondence I have was a follow-up at the comments that were made last week about what's about phase one and what's not. Well, if you want to know what Mission Warren.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Mr. Bradley, please go ahead when you're ready.
Evening once again, board members and staff. This is Eugene Bradley, founder of Silicon Valley Transit Users. Once again, I want to commend and thank VTA for listening to us, the riding public, and the public in general for increasing bus service on several bus lines, as well as really bringing back a test of the rear door only boarding. This was done back in last March until about August. One concern that has come up that several members have brought up to me is that enforcement. When I hear reports on TV from Mr. Courtney regarding the fact that bus drivers aren't safe driving buses for fear of assault, that concerns me about where the security is for these buses during this crisis. Well, I hear from one of my members that she's reported several times about the lack of enforcement and that people have vandalized buses. I wonder where's the security? So what are the VTA's particular plans to work with the county that this is enforced? I'd like to hear from Ms. Gaeta and other staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Blair, please go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. I guess thank you to the words about mask use and different rearboarding things and how mask use is happening at this time. And thanks. It was nice, informative stuff. And it was a reminder myself how, I wish we could talk more about ATU things here at BOD meetings. And I think it was something we were all kind of started working on in the last days of Nuria Fernandez, and I hope we can continue that and all of our good ideals we had in her last days here, we can continue that. And very much of a welcome to Evelyn Tran and how we can all navigate ourselves and then work toward our better ideals and remember Nuria's past, and we'll just build our good future. Thanks a lot.
Our last three speakers are John Courtney, Huskar Castro, and Monica Mallon. John, please go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, Chairman Hendricks. Good evening, Interim General Manager Tran. Hopefully we can get rid of that word interim. I just want to say on behalf of the 1,500 ATU members that I represent, I wanted to give a big shout out and a thank you to the ATU executive staff and a couple individuals particularly. They really took the human factor and put everything else aside, and the employees are really thankful. In the very beginning of the pandemic, from March until August 1st, we had only 14 positive cases. We've had a total of 170 positives so far. Hopefully that'll go down. And just since the beginning of the year, we've had 69 cases of positive COVID with one death in October. So however we look at the front door boarding, the rear door boarding, if we save one life, we're very successful. And the ability to put money aside and look at the human factor is a great asset for this company. So thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all the employees that are out doing the hard work every day. Next speaker, please.
Oscar, please go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Good evening, Chairman Hendricks and members of the board. My name is Oscar Castro with Working Partnerships USA, and we'd like to take a moment to stand alongside ATU and all the partners who've worked tirelessly for the livelihood of transit workers. We were pleased to hear that VTA will be implementing a rear door boarding policy and as a safety precaution for transit workers. These are people who have been on the front lines operating mass transit vehicles so our community can continue to utilize public transportation throughout Santa Clara County. Putting rear door boarding in place throughout the VTA system is crucial in order to ensure driver safety. We would like to also state that that it is our hope and expectation that this measure stay in place for as long as necessary to ensure the protection of these individuals. We look forward to long-term implementation of this policy so that our buses can continue to get our community around, all the while knowing that we are doing everything as possible to minimize health risks towards transit workers. Thank you for taking action on this matter and for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Monica, please go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Monica Mallon. I'm with Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, and as others have said, we really appreciate the move to coming back to rear door boarding. Really protecting our essential transit workers is extremely important, and it's really important to make sure that we're spending our money, to save lives. That's really one of the things that it was supposed to be for in the CARES Act. So really hope that this can continue as long as necessary. And going forward in the budget, I hope there's also a consideration of improving health and safety even after the pandemic with lessons that we've learned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think that was all of our public speakers. So we'll close the public comment section. Coming back and seeing if there are any other comments from my colleagues, Member Smidian. Member Smidian, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to pass after all that. Thank you.
Okay. Before we close out this item, do any of my other colleagues have anything they'd like to add or bring to this? Okay, we're going to move on to 8.2, the chairperson's report. For the chairperson's report, I would like to update you on the Section 218 agreements efforts that are going on. As a reminder for everyone, this effort will protect Social Security benefits for our employees. Today, just today, the ballots have been mailed out to each active VTA employee. The voting period begins February 8th and goes through March 9th at 9 p.m., closes at 9 p.m. Ballots will be counted on March 10th. We are launching an aggressive campaign to bring awareness of the ballots and the importance of voting. To the employees who are tuned in, please remember these important details. Number one, an X marks your ballot. And I just want to go ahead and repeat this. We have some very specific rules that are governed by the bodies that are above us from Social Security and stuff. You must use an X, nothing else. You don't fill in the box or anything else like that. There's a box on the ballot and you must put an X and keep the X within the shape of the box. Those are the rules. We want you to, number two, we want you to vote early. Mail your ballot or drop it off at the ballot boxes at the different locations that we have for you. And please, please, please remind your colleagues to vote. This is really, really important. I want to take this opportunity to thank our labor groups, AFSCME, ATU, SEIU, and TAEA for their partnership and commitment to this process. They've reached out and continue to reach out to their members using their respective communication channels. And I just want to go ahead and state again, the entire time we've been working on this 218 agreement, it has been an extremely collaborative process between VTA, staff, management, and our labor teams and stuff. So I just want to thank everybody who's been involved in that with the collaborative nature that we've shown in being able to try and get the communication out to our members so they can vote yes. There's only a single item that is on the ballot. And what the yes vote does is yes preserves the pension and Social Security benefits for all of our past, current, and future employees. So it's really, really important. Please vote yes with an X. And that concludes my report. Elaine, I want to just double check. Do we do public comments on my report?
Yes, we can take public comment on chairperson report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to our public speakers then, and if we could queue them up.
Mr. LeBrun, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So the first thing I'd like to bring into your attention is that there is missing correspondence in the packet because you and I had an exchange about VTA ridership, which is actually 30% of pre-COVID, not 12 to 14%, as you stated at La Raza. And I hope that you and Evelyn will be better prepared when we meet again with La Raza next month. Going back to the previous item, which also BART was not agendized, but a report on ridership was agendized, but never presented. And I included there a request that you report not only on bus and light rail ridership, but you also report on BART extension ridership, which is abysmal. Thank you and good night.
Okay. Thank you. That's the end of our public speakers right there. Moving on to item 8.3. Are there any items of concern or referral to our administration? I got to get on my right screen over here. Member Perales.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll actually confirm something that Roland had complained about just a moment ago, actually on his prior comment. And that was in regards to getting the update on BART, and that was not on the agenda. And actually, I took notice of that, and it has been something that was just kind of standing on the agenda, as we know. And so I was very interested in getting an update on that. And I think traditionally it was under 7.1. And so that is why at the last minute, the general manager and staff did include that under her report under 8.1. So I actually appreciate that, that was included. But I would ask that if, especially given just the nature of everything going on still with BART, that we at least keep that update on future agendas as standing as it was previously under 7.1. But thank you for including it in a verbal update today. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Smitty.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, Mr. Chairman, in passing, a few minutes ago, staff was kind enough to indicate that we had some, I gather, either late arriving or additionally arriving correspondence, but did not indicate what that was. I wonder if we just asked staff to identify what that was, make sure that we all, or at least in my case, have all of the correspondence that I should have reviewed or can review following the meeting.
Elaine, would you like to share anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So typically we would send an email to the board, anything that we've added to the packet. We have a deadline of 1 p.m. to receive public comments, and any comments received before that time, we strive to make sure that that's placed in the packet and we send it out to the board members and all the subscribers. For written public comments received after that deadline, we would post that on the website after the meeting, and you'll receive another email from us. So you get a lot of emails from us, basically. So you'll get an email from us tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. I think we're done with there. Moving on to 8.4. Does anyone have any announcements? Okay, I'm not seeing any announcements. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we need you guys to go to closed session. As a reminder, 9.1A was removed from the agenda under orders of the day. For closed session, we'll only be discussing 9.1.B, public employment. To the board members, the closed session Teams link has been sent to your calendar invites by the board office. Please click that link and call in. Board members, please if you're leaving your Zoom here, please make sure your Zoom video and microphone are turned off while we're in the closed session. And we'll be going to closed session because I need you all to come back at the end of it so we can go ahead and report back what happens. So at this point right now, we'll go ahead and we're going to convene to closed session. So I'll meet you all there.
Okay, to the board members, I just wanted to let you know that I sent an updated calendar invite, so it floats to the top of your email around 7:50 today. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Elaine.
Hello, Elaine, or whoever, can you let me know when we get the appropriate amount of people back so that we can come back together? Elaine or somebody from the board staff, did you guys hear my question?
Yeah, Elaine is getting back on right now.
Okay, okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Hello, folks. If you guys can turn on your video, I'll just count to make sure we have enough folks.
Elaine, my video won't go on. This is Cindy.
Okay, got it.
Cindy, I'll give you a tutorial.
And
Not.
Elaine, just let me know when you think we've got enough people.
I'm here, Magdalena.
Sergio from San Jose is here as well.
And Joe from the board.
We're good.
Okay, so we are reconvening back to open session. I'm going to provide the closed session report. There were no reportable actions taken during the closed session. So I want to thank my colleagues for being here. I want to thank the public for participating. And thanks everybody. Stay safe out there. And we are adjourning at 8:46. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take care.
All right, folks, we're going to end the meeting for all now. Thank you.